everyone, welcome back to the Honey Reads. My name is Mary if you're new here, and today we're going to be doing my March wrap-up. This month I read 11 books, and a lot of them you would have seen in my 2 prior vlogs, so we're going to try to keep this short and concise, but I do like to ramble, so we'll see how long this ends up being. The sound quality hopefully is a little better today. I do have a mic for this video. I do have a lot of background noise in a lot of my videos, so we're going to see if this works. If not, we're going to have to figure something else out, but for now, let me know what you guys think. First, we can go over my March stats. So total, we read 11 books. We read 3,295 pages. Of the 11 books, 7 were digital or ebooks, and 4 were physical. I did DNF 1 book, and that was Barefoot Season by Susan Malari. So in my, I think it was my January wrap-up, I talked about my first book that I ever read by Susan Malari, the Boardwalk Bookshop, I think. But I love that book. I gave it a 5 stars. And so I read 2, or tried to read 2 Susan Malari books this month, and this one I DNF'd. I just couldn't get into it, and I was reading it at night before bed for a few nights in a row, and I just didn't like it, so I put it away for now. Maybe we'll get back to it at another time, but for now, it's going to be a DNF for me. As for the rest of the books, for my ratings, I gave 1 book 2.5 stars, I gave 3 books 3 stars, 3 books 3.5 stars, and 3 books 4 stars, and 0 5 stars. This is my first month I didn't have a 5-star read, which is kind of disappointing. But I guess that is what it is. So the first book was The Promise of Darkness by Beck McMaster. So this one I gave a 3.5 stars. It was like a fantasy romance type of book. So this book is basically like all about fays. It is kind of like ACOTAR vibes, but I do think they're pretty different. I wouldn't say one is like better than the other. They're just a little bit different in their details, but kind of the same premise of like a fae world, like different houses, different courts, and the politics behind everything, and the feuds between courts and stuff. So this one, there's a main character named Iskvian, or V. It's kind of easier to say. So she is like the daughter of one of the like queens, and she's kind of like the daughter that is hated. She's kind of shunned to the side. You don't really know why. You get to learn more throughout the story. But her mother basically trades her to be a hostage with another of the courts, with the Prince of Evernight, and his name is Thiago. And basically she has to be his hostage for a couple of months. And it's not like she's being like tortured or anything. It's kind of just like a nice hostage. She's being traded. And so they're kind of enemies. He's kind of seen as like a horrible person, but you soon find out, you know, there's some really good things about him, and you kind of just follow their story of falling in love. I mean, it is a romance, and there's no spoilers there. It was fun. I did enjoy it. Some parts were a little, like, dragged on a bit, and there was a pretty good amount of world building. I did enjoy that. Overall, it was pretty good. I will continue the series. I just don't think it was a 5-star read. Probably like a 3.5 for me. The next book is The Summer Getaway by Susan Malari. So this was my second book that I read from this author. So it was a romance, and unfortunately, it wasn't a 5-star. It was 3 stars for me. I'm a little, I don't want to say disappointed, because obviously authors write different stories. It's not going to be the same world that you read before, unless it's a series. It's just this one was quite different. There was a lot of different tropes, and when I found the first book that I read from her was very realistic, this one was very unrealistic, and it had a lot of drama added to it. So it was quite different. It took me a while to get into this book. I wasn't obsessed with any of the characters. I didn't really like the main character. I did like the main male character, Mason. But basically it's a story about this single mom, and she just went through a divorce, and she's kind of trying to figure out what the heck to do with her life. So she packs up her bags and goes and visits her great aunt named Lillian. And her great aunt is very old, kind of near death. And there she meets Mason, who has family ties to Lillian. And basically they start a budding romance. Wasn't my favorite. I will still continue reading Susan Malari. But hopefully I do find another like 5-star read. The next book is Indigo Ridge by Devney Perry, and this one I gave a 4 stars. So it was like a romance mystery all-in-one combined story, which is the first that I've read of that kind of genre, so that was really cool. So this story is basically about a woman named Winslow, and she goes and moves back to like her hometown, childhood town, to become the new chief of police. And on her first night, she goes to a bar and has a one-night stand with this guy named Griffin because she thinks that he doesn't live in the town and she doesn't want to be connected to the town, but she's single, wants to have a little fun. And then the next day, she, goes to her first day on the job, kind of meeting everyone in the town. It's a small town, and she meets Griffin as like one of the town's founding families. He's their oldest son, so he was not an out-of-towner. And so you kind of follow their story of like, being kind of strangers to enemies to lovers. But then there's also another underlying trope or storyline of a suicide or murder. Everyone says it's a suicide, but Winslow thinks that it's a murder, so that kind of investigation. So it was pretty cool. I did really enjoy it. I will continue the series. I do have the second book on hold, so I'm waiting for that to come in. But yeah, I did really like this book. It wasn't perfect for me, but I did like it nonetheless. And I would suggest it if you do like that kind of murder mystery tied with a romance. It was pretty cool. The next book, I have the actual physical book, but it is A House in the Sky by Amanda Lindhout. So this one I kind of talked a lot about in my swapping my screen time for reading time video, so I'm going to kind of keep it short and concise. But this is a really heartbreaking memoir about a girl named Amanda who kind of got really into reporting and photography in countries all around the world. And so one day she goes with her friend and they go to Somalia to kind of do like reporting there because it is a very war-ridden country. And on their 4th day, I believe, they get abducted and held hostage for over a year in Somalia. So this is basically her point of view of everything that happened before, during, and after the captivity. It was very, very heartbreaking. Some parts were incredibly hard to read. I would not go into this book without knowing all of the triggers because it was very heavy. I wouldn't say I recommend this book, but it is a very heartbreaking memoir and kind of terrifying that it happened. So that was that. I did give it a 4 stars. The next book I read is Pineapple Street by Jenny Jackson, which I gave a 2.5 stars. It is a literary fiction, and I got this as an ARC on NetGalley. So I read this also during my swapping my screen time for reading time, so I did talk about this quite a bit there. Unfortunately, I didn't like this book all that much. So it is a story about a very wealthy family in New York City, and the point of views are between 3 girls or 3 women, 2 sisters and 1 sister-in-law, and kind of just about their life. There isn't like a specific plot that is followed other than like their own storyline and their own life. I just did not really connect to any of the characters, and because it is such a character-driven book, I found it pretty hard to read. The chapters though did end off on cliffhangers that kind of kept me reading and kept me engaged, but a lot of the times I was pretty bored and not really wanting to read. I'm sorry if this video shifted. I finished recording and I realized it stopped recording halfway through my video, so I am going to be redoing my reviews for the last half of these books so they might be a little bit quicker. So I was talking about the Pineapple Street before the video ended, but I think I finished my thoughts for that book, so we're just going to move on. So the next book I read was The Drift by C.J. Tudor, which is a post-apocalyptic horror type thriller, I guess you could say. I gave this a 3.5 stars. I did get this as an ARC as well from NetGalley. So this story is basically about like a virus that overtakes the world, and you get 3 different POVs that end up connecting together, but you just don't know how until near the end of the book. And all of these are post the virus kind of taking over the world, but like they're a little bit separated between probably years, is my assumption. It doesn't really say. I think this was really fun. There were some really great twists that I didn't guess. It was kind of a little triggering because it was like a pandemic world, and I was like, I don't know if I really want to read this right now. But after about 50 pages, I started getting into the book, and I think it was just a fun book to read. I didn't really enjoy the ending that much, but it was a very probable and understandable ending. Just wasn't my favorite way and what I thought it was going to end like. So, yeah. But every chapter does end off on a cliffhanger that kind of keeps you reading and keeps you engaged. So that was fun because it kept you, kept you reading for longer than you think you were going to read. The next book I read was Two for the Road by Chantal Guertin, I think is her last name, or that's how you pronounce it. So this is a romance, and I also got it as an ARC, and I gave this book a 4 stars. So you follow a girl named Gigi, who is a romance bookshop owner, and she's obsessed with romance, and she's specifically obsessed with this one romance book, like audiobook narrator named Zane. And she gets presented with like the chance of a lifetime to go on a 10-day bus tour that is hosted by Zane. So she goes for it, and it ends up not being what she expected it to be. So it was a very fun story. All of the characters are such great characters, like all the side characters. You get to learn so much about them, but it's not overwhelming. I just think it was so much fun. Honestly, I liked Gigi, I think, the least out of all the characters. But overall, I think it was such a great read, and I loved the romance between the 2 characters. I don't want to say who, but yeah, I love that romance. The next book I read was Destroy Me by Tahara Mafi, which is the first novella in the Shatter Me series, and the POV is from Warner. So I gave this a 3.5 stars. I really liked it a lot more than I thought I would. And I loved hearing from Warner's POV and learning more about him. It kind of sets a really good understanding of who he is and why he is the way he is. And so you kind of root for him. A lot of people root for him, even though he's technically the bad guy. But yeah, I really enjoyed this one. It was very action-packed for a book that was a little over 100 pages. I wish it was longer. But yeah, it was great. I really enjoyed it, and it really set up a good stepping stone for continuing the series. The next 3 books I read in my last vlog, which is my Love It or Leave It reading vlog. So I'm not going to go too in depth about these books because I did full-fledged reviews during that vlog. But we'll kind of do a Spark Notes version. So the first book is The View from Castle Rock by Alice Munro. I gave this a 3 stars. So this is a short story collection / memoir about Alice Munro's father's side of the family from the 1800s to present day, basically when this was published, I think in 2006. I did enjoy parts of this. There were parts of every short story that I liked, but there were also parts of most of them that I didn't like and I thought were boring. Honestly, I think I would have given this a 2 stars if it was not for the short story The Ticket, because I loved that one so much. I'm not like a big short story collection person. I just find short stories are too short for my enjoyment, but I really enjoyed Alice Munro's writing, and I do think I will continue reading her work. The next book I read was The Figure in the Carpet by Henry James, which was a short story, and it's a classic. So this book is about basically an unnamed, pretty unreliable narrator who is a writing critic, and you follow him on like a journey of trying to figure out the deeper meaning behind a writer he's obsessed with and his works. And it's kind of a little bit satire because he's a writing critic but can't dissect writing, and kind of goes through extravagant lengths to try and figure out what the deeper meaning or hidden message behind something is. So it did take me a while to get into this book, which sucks because it was only like 56 pages. So if it takes you like half the book to actually be interested in it, the last half ends like this, and you kind of just feel unrelieved and not satisfied. So I did give this a 3 stars. There are points that I did like, and I did enjoy the writing. I do think I will just pick up Henry James's full novels instead of short stories. The last book that I read in March is The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. I gave this a 4 stars, but I do think if I were to reread it, I would give it a 5 stars. It just took me quite a few months to get into this book, and I think because of that, it did skew my feelings towards it because it took me quite a while to keep getting back into it, so I was forgetting parts about the beginning. But this book, I mean, such a great novel, such great messages between the writings, so quotable, so many amazing passages, and you can't not just love Dorian even though he's filled with flaws. He's such a funny and just hilarious character in terms of like what he does and the meanings or like the reasonings behind his like really stupid and frivolous actions. Yeah, what a great novel. I highly suggest it, but I know many people have already read this book. Those were all the books that I read in March. So March has not ended yet, but I am recording this ahead of time, so I still have a few days left of March. So I think I'm gonna go and go over all of the books that I'm currently reading, because I think I'm going to finish a few of them by the end of March. The first book I'm reading is the Book of Lymph by Lisa Levitt. So this is a book all about your lymphatic system and ways to support it and what your lymphatic system does. It's very approachable. I've really been enjoying this book, and I do think I'm going to finish it within the next few days. I think it's just such a great starting point if you want to learn more about your lymphatic system. The writing is very approachable, but it is still very scientific, and yeah, just a really great book. And I am a sucker for this cover. I think it's beautiful. The next book I'm reading on my Kobo, and that is Unravel Me by Tahereh Mafi. So that's the second book in the Shatter Me series. I'm about, I think, 40% of the way through this book. I don't love it, but I don't hate it. Juliet and Adam are pretty annoying and insufferable, but I do love Kenji, and Warren is about to be introduced, or like just was introduced back into the storyline, so I can't wait for continuing that, because yeah, that's what we're all here for. But I don't know if I'm going to finish this by the end of March. We'll see. I usually read it before bed, so it depends on how tired I am, how many pages I get through, but I think I usually get around 30, so I don't know if I'm going to finish it, but we'll try. And then the last 2 books I'm reading are classics, so still reading War and Peace, still going strong. It's a lot slower than I thought it would like take me to read, but that's okay. I'm just trying to pace myself and enjoy and immerse myself into this story. So still going strong on that. We'll see when I end up finishing it. And then we've got David Copperfield for the Game of Tomes book club. So I have to finish this by the end of April, and thank God, because I have not started it. I've been just so busy with other books and other challenges that I have kind of set it aside, and now I'm a little terrified because it's like 800 pages. So I think we're going to just have to set a daily reading goal and stick to it so we can finish this by the end of April. Thankfully, April's book is The Catcher in the Rye, and that is so short, so I think we'll be able to do it. So those were all of the books that I read in March. Let me know what you guys read in March, what you suggest, what you don't suggest, and how your reading month went, and what are any of your goals or ambitions for April. I do have a few reading plans for April, but I think we're going to get into that in my next video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you had a fantastic reading month, and I will see you guys in my next video. Happy reading!
You make me wanna feel it.